Hi, today I'm going to show you how to change the oil and oil filter in a 2012 Toyota Sienna. Now, if you've been around YouTube a little bit, you've probably seen a number of videos on how to change oil in various vehicles. Honestly, some of those videos are good, some of them not so good. Hopefully this one is going to be really helpful. So before we get started, I want to show you a few of the tools that you're going to need. So here's all the stuff you're going to need. Obviously, here's your 08 20 synthetic motor oil, which is what the manufacturer recommends for this vehicle. You got your Toyota oil filter element, actually, with 2 O-rings included in the box, which I'll show a little bit later. Obviously your funnel, and a few of the tools here. You have just a 3/8" drive ratchet, an extension, and a little longer extension. Honestly, these will be used to take out part of the oil filter. I kind of like the longer one. We'll see later. Less likely you're going to knock your knuckles into the underside of your car. And then you will need a 14mm socket in order to remove the drain plug on the oil. A rag and a pair of rubber gloves, not a bad idea either. There are 2 other tools you want which can make life a bit easier for you. One is the oil filter wrench by MotivX tools, and the other the oil filter drain tool, also by MotivX. Now, the great thing about the MotivX oil filter wrench is it can be used on more than just one vehicle. As you can see, I've got a 2012 Sienna and a 2014 4Runner, and the wrench can be used on both. So if you're in my situation, you basically get 2 for the price of 1. So our first step is going to be to remove the oil filler cap. This will allow the oil to drain a lot more smoothly once we take that drain plug off. We'll just set that guy right over there. So our next step is going to be taking this little guy off. Now this is actually the oil filter housing. All of that will eventually come off. This is taken off first in order to drain whatever oil is in the filter out before you take this off. So if you're used to the canister style oil filters, when you take those off, you get oil draining around the sides, all of your hand gets everywhere, it's kind of a mess. So we're taking this off, which will require a 3/8" extension that we showed you a little bit earlier. So I'm going to try to get a good angle for you here. There's not a lot of room between the drain pan and this. We're going to stick that thing in there. As you can see from back here, if you use that shorter extension, you're going to knock your hands into the bottom side of the vehicle. So we're going to loosen this up. Unfortunately, we're going to need 2 hands for this. So this is that plug that just came out. And that's what the filter looks like after you take it out. Or I should say the filter housing. Our next step is going to be using the MotivX oil drain tool. As you can see, this guy is threaded. This screws right into that hole that we just took the oil filter housing drain plug out of. And this tube will go into our drain pan, which will eliminate a lot of oil mess. So let's get to that. I'm going to add one other piece of information about the MotivX oil filter drain tool, and that is after you get this out of the packaging and you are ready to use it and thread it into the bottom of the oil filter housing, you want to loosen this hex bolt up and basically unscrew it. And you'll notice that you'll screw it so this basic port here gets depressed inside of this housing. And if you don't do this, what's going to happen is oil is going to get released out of the housing of the oil filter and get drained all over the place. So this little piece here will push up inside of the oil filter housing and drain oil all over the place. That's a bad move and defeats the purpose of this tool. So once you have this hex bolt unscrewed to this point, so it looks like this. Then you screw it into the oil filter housing, and once it's all fastened in there, then you take this knurled part down here and screw it up. Now as you see, this guy starts raising up, and as it raises up, what will happen is it'll depress the release valve inside of the oil filter housing and allow the oil to drain out through the tube. And then you just do the opposite of that procedure when you remove it. So hopefully that helps. Important move. It's actually those instructions on the back of the packaging for the tool, but just thought I'd mention that if you don't read the packaging like I did not. So the key to the oil filter drain tool is making sure you've got it screwed completely in. As you can see, the tube now is clear, or mostly clear. It was completely black from all the oil draining through there, so we know that the oil's drained out of the filter now, and that's nice. And of course the other end of this guy goes right into the drain pan, so it avoids any splatter. So all of our oil is drained out of there. Now notice this little groove right around here, this little O-ring that actually seats in there, and it will stick in there with the oil. So the next step is removing the oil filter housing, which we'll use the MotivX filter housing drain tool. You notice there's a few grooves here on this side and then one on that side, and those match up with the grooves you see right there. So I know my hand's going to get in the way of the lighting here. Kind of see how that seats down. Once it's in there, you can really feel it's really well seated on the housing. It's going to get a good grip. And there's other ways you can get this filter off, but this wrench makes it a lot easier. And we'll use a 3/8 inch extension to go in that end, basically converting this into a giant size socket. So here we are with the wrench in place, and I'm going to start cranking that. Again, I'm going to need both hands. Unfortunately, I have no way to film with no hands. And I've loosened this up quite a bit. It was pretty tight because there isn't another O-ring around the housing that seals it off, and that was kind of grabbing a little bit. So you don't want to force it too much, because these little tabs on here have been known to break off from other people's experiences. And there we go, and there's the filter element. We're going to get a little better angle on this in a second, but that's where everything fits inside of. So we have here the oil filter, the old one obviously, and the drain housing, the oil filter housing rather. Take that puppy right out. That's what the inside looks like. Beautiful. Drop that a little bit. Again, the motor oil that we're going to be filling this up with is going to be the 0820 motor oil. Most of these containers are coming with about 5 quarts. Of course, the manufacturer recommended level is 4.7 quarts or 4.4 liters. So we got to kind of eyeball this a little bit to get it try to dial in as best as we can. So this next step is pretty easy, so I'm not going to film all this and waste your time, but just drop that filter in and start filling the guy up. So one other tip I never thought I'd have to give anyone, but apparently I need this tip, is that when you're positioning your funnel to fill up the oil, you want to make sure you actually get it down inside of this fill area, because you'll notice there's a gap out here in between the fill port and this plastic housing, And if you get your filter in there, which is very likely because you only have so much room between the opening of the engine compartment and the housing here, that oil is going to drain all down the backside of your engine block and all over the floor. And it will look kind of like that. Yeah. Dumb move of the year. Anyway, it is possible obviously to get this position right, but you got to make sure you really get it inside there. Unfortunately, the lighting on this is terrible, so I can't really show you, but just make sure you get your funnel down inside that hole. Well, that about wraps up this video. Hope you found it helpful, and I hope you've learned a couple things, not the least of which is to get the motor oil in the engine and not on the engine. I've put a couple links below for the MotivX website where you can find all of their different tools for changing your oil. And I hope your next oil change goes a lot smoother than mine did.